Okay, I am going to show you how to do a back stitch. Now, a back stitch to me is the one stitch that if you need to know any stitch, it is the back stitch because it is the one that I use most frequently, and it is very simple, and I do think it just takes a little bit of practice as you get going. But what the back stitch is it's this happy right here. So it's how you can do your straight stitches, you can curve with a back stitch, so you can really do a lot with a back stitch. So we're going to go ahead and teach you how to do a back stitch by stitching this cute word happy. Now, a back stitch is just exactly what it is. You are stitching backwards. So on this happy, instead of starting at the first part of the line, you're actually going to go a stitch length into the pattern. Now, a stitch length is what you need to determine how small or how large you want your stitch length to be. Now, a good gauge, what I kind of do on my stitching pattern is this wash-away stabilizer. If you look close at it, has a lot of little tiny dots. Now, that kind of helps me to gauge how I'm going to create my stitch length. So I kind of go by about 2 different dots on my stabilizer. It just kind of helps me keep my stitch length the same. So you can see here, I brought my needle up about a stitch length in. Now I'm going to take my needle backwards and go back down to the beginning of that artwork right there. So all you do is you just pull that through. Now you're not pulling tight, but you're having it so that it's nice and flush with your fabric. So to go to my next stitch, I'm going to go another stitch length forward. See that? And I come up. Now the secret here as you go is to go back down that same stitch hole that you came up. So that's what's going to keep your stitches really nice and tight and look really I guess, could you say the word professional? I think you could. So you want to make sure that you're coming up and down those same stitch holes, because I have had people be like, I stitched mine and it looks like a kindergartner stitched it. And all my critique is for that is, you know what? You have to make sure that you're coming back up and down the same stitch hole, and you will be able to avoid having it look like a little child did it. And the second thing is to make sure that your stitch lengths are as much as possible the same. And why I say that is because you don't want a bunch of little tiny stitches and a bunch of long stitches, because that once again is what would make it look like a kindergartner has stitched your project. So as long as you can remember those 2 main things as you are doing your back stitch, then you will have a beautiful embroidery. And like I said, that's why you want to practice, is because it does take some practice to be able to know how to keep your stitch lengths, the same. And there isn't a good or bad to whether you do your stitch lengths longer or shorter. It's really just preference. I like to do mine a nice medium size because it doesn't take quite so long. And if you do them too long, then it's harder to do curves. So if you just do a nice medium stitch length, which is what I said is about 2 of these little dots in my stabilizer, then that gets me a really nice stitch length. So, okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to do now the A, and you can see there's some curves to the A, right? So once again, we're going to bring our needle up a stitch length, and then I'm going to pull it through and take it back down to the starting point. Now to do the curve, I don't have a long stitch length, you can see, so I'll be able to do my curves nicely. So I'm coming up a stitch length, pulling my needle through, and then going back down that previous stitch hole. So there we go. By keeping a nice even stitch length, I'm able to do a curve and have it look really nice. And you just keep on going. So back stitches are really simple, and to me, once you get your practice and you've got the rhythm down, it's really nice and relaxing because you don't really have to think about it. You don't have to make sure you have your fingers in a certain spot, or like a French knot or any of those lazy daisy stitches. This is just much more relaxing of a stitch, I think. So Okay, so we're just going to keep on going and we're going to stitch this happy. I'm keeping my same stitch lengths, and we're just going to go for it and finish this off. Okay, that is how we do a back stitch. So you can see how easy and relaxing and fun the back stitch is. And that, like I said, is one that I use the most often on all my embroidery projects. So that's one that you're really going to want to practice and master.